Judith Carlin.
I'm Mohammed Shikatra.
And I'm Hunter Smith.
So today we are going to be telling you guys about frac sand. So what we're going to be covering in this presentation is what is frac sand, why you should care, and then why it's so difficult to get. So what exactly is frac sand? It is made of small, rounded, and extremely durable pieces of quartz. So I know we've talked a lot in class about how quartz is one of the most strong minerals, which is why it is so good for this process. And it's used for the process of hydraulic fracturing, which is called fracking. That's what I'm going to refer to it as from now on. This process produces oil and natural gases, and it is currently these gases are in extremely high demand, which is something that Hunter and Mohammed will talk about a little bit later. It's also very controversial, which will come up a little bit later as well. So the process of hydraulic fracturing, like I said, is a way of extracting oil and natural gases out of rocks and minerals such as shale, which is something that's packed really tightly, so it's really hard to get the resources out of it with other processes. This process does produce the majority of the United States natural gases, which is part of why it is in such high demand. And shale is one of the rocks that is used the most often because it does contain such high quantities. It's very dense, like I said, which is what limits the flow of the natural gases out of this rock, which is where the fracking comes in. So how it works, the first step of hydraulic fracturing or fracking is to drill into the rock and pump in really high quantities of water at very high pressures. They continue doing this until it eventually fractures, which is where it gets its name, fracking. These fractures are then propped open by the frac sand, which is where it gets its name, it's called a proppant sometimes because it is used to prop open the fractures. The frac sand is then poured in to keep it open, and then that's what causes it to allow the fluids to flow out a lot more easily. A little bit about the cost of frac sand. As of 2011, it was $54.83 per ton, and it can take up to thousands of tons of frac sand for one mining area. That's something I believe Mohammed is going to talk about a little bit, but the prices did go down and ended up coming back up to about $54 by 2018. Currently, they are looking for other materials that could be used for frac sand because it is so expensive, but since quartz is such a durable product, right now is the most cost-effective to use. There's also some environmental concerns with frac sand because, like I said, they use such high quantities of water. As of right now, they haven't really found any good ways of recycling that water, and also we've done a lot of research and we couldn't find anything about whether they recycle the frac sand itself, which is something that is a concern and makes it a little bit controversial.
So why should you care? The first part is that frac sand makes fracking much more efficient than it is without it. It's also a very dangerous process, and it helps reduce the carbon emissions from a lot of different processes in fracking, and the mining of the frac sand itself can do a lot of environmental damage. It makes fracking more efficient by going into the cracks and keeping them open so that more oil and natural gas can come out. This also helps stabilize the ground and prevent subsidence and earthquakes and other things like that that we can see around fracking areas. And it also allows for fewer drill sites. With horizontal drilling, they can put in one drill site and go out at a larger radius, reducing the sites on the ground environment. And with the sand, it can go out further and drill deeper for as much natural gas as well as it can get. It's also very hard to make. The grains need to be pretty uniform when they're done with the processing. And there's a man there that is in charge of the processing at this plant. And as you can see, all the dust and everything that is in the air is actually very harmful for them to breathe. It's led to a lot of different diseases and cancers. And the most well-known one is silicosis. And it's basically from breathing in the sediment that is in the air of the different quartz crystals. The processing is very inefficient, and it can also cause burns to the workers if they get too close to some of the machines that are processing. So it does have positive environmental effects by reducing the amount of areas that need to have drilled for the fracking process, and but with the mining of the frac sand itself, it produces a lot of environmental issues because a lot of places across the U.S. Are places where they mine the frac sand, and they're basically taking off all the layers above this frac sand and then taking out the sand for processing and then putting everything else that they took off back on top, which can lead to increased erosion and a lot of different problems, including subsidence. And as we can see by this chart here, the mining of frac sand has gone up exponentially in just the last 20 years in the United States, leading to damage. And that's a picture of one of the frac sand mines.
Next, I'll be discussing what makes it hard to get from sort of like a company's perspective, and these are the three major points that I was able to find information on and that I'll be discussing. So the first point is locations, and the prime area for frac sand is within the Midwestern states, and those are Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Minnesota, Michigan, Missouri, Nebraska, and Wisconsin. And just because it's limited to these states, it makes it in demand to other states. So since it's only from there, it will touch on into the next part, which is transportation. Now here I have two photos of the main ways that it's transported, which is by train, and the truck that is displayed there is actually titled a frac truck, which is specially made just to carry frac sand. And that truck will cost companies somewhere around $70,000 to $175,000 just to have. And a fun fact about transportation is that just a company that is doing well on this will transport somewhere between 20,000 to 40,000 tons of frac sand in 1 month. And the price differences between those is that on train, it will cost around $5.25 per ton, as for a truck it will cost about $10 per ton. And using the rail car is a better alternative, as they saw in the past, because it will only cost somewhere around $85 to $200 a day to use the rail car compared to moving it by truck, which, talking about costs, then moves on to expenses. And there isn't much that was provided about like the averages for like using this at all, that, well, to a college student, but the two that I was able to find is the averages for equipment and the worker's salary, which a worker can actually make somewhere around $59,000 a year. And for the equipment, a single piece can run from $15,000 to over $100,000 in equipment. And like it was mentioned earlier, just to mention the cost of frac sand now. In 2016, it was around $15 to $20 a ton. Then in 2017, $35 to $40, and currently in 2018, it is around $45 to $55 a ton.
So there are references. Thank you guys for listening. Does anybody have any questions?
Did they talk about what the source of this frac sand is, where they're getting it, why the sand is wherever they're finding it?
I know it's a lot over the Midwest,
Yeah,
especially, but not specifically.
but the specifics on why or there, the details.
And again, you may not have come across this. Is there a reason why we don't mine frac sand in Ohio? Did anyone?
I didn't come across that in any of my
Yeah,
research.
when I was trying to look up more about like states and with frac sand, Ohio wasn't anywhere near like discussion of it at all.
Okay.
I would assume, though, it does have to do with, obviously, with the geology, but because we probably just don't have quartz in Ohio, which is one of the things that is like the most important part of frac sand.
Well, I mean, we have quartz, we have sand, but frac sand, they're real picky on what kind of sand they use because it's got to get into those cracks, so certain size, certain roundness, and other things.
Yeah, I saw a lot of research about the process of how it took, like, you had to make sure it was all the right size, and then you had to wash it, and then you had to dry it, and then you had to wash it again. And, yeah, it was a lot.
Anyone else with questions? All right, thank you.